In any case, clockwise, we've got John Hammer, Bill Binney, and Beth, my wife, and here we are on YouTube. We did an impromptu live on YouTube with
Michael Yan.
And he was in Panama, right on the Pan American Highway, watching who's going along there. And basically, he says that the bad guys are the ones who are coming in through Brazil and Ecuador, and then they make their way on foot or by bus up through Panama. So the ones coming, he's stationed himself like 100 feet from the highway where he watches who's coming, and just was sitting there at an outdoor table, I guess, under a tent or something. And you could hear the rainforest, you could hear the trucks go by, and then they'd circle around behind him, trucks and buses full of people. And these are the bad characters. And his explanation of it was kind of long-winded. And so when I edited it down to 48 minutes, which I put up on my regular channel last night, and it not only didn't get taken down, but they even monetized it.
Now you know inflation is killing your retirement dead. The real rate of inflation, well, it just won't let you keep up or make a profit. You need a different approach. Precious metals, not Robin Hood or stocks that can crash and leave you losing money. An IRA or 401k with Noble Gold is the answer. And this month, Noble Gold is gifting a genuine, rare Carson City minted Morgan silver dollar with every qualifying IRA or 401k. Find out more at www.noblegoldinvestments.com.
Anyway, I got to thinking about the interview, and we let him go on too much. We didn't interrupt him enough, so he didn't stay focused. But what he was trying to say, why he's there, is he's trying to warn the United States that there are bad characters coming up through there, and exactly where they're coming through, and where, if we were really interested in protecting the country, we could set people there. Panama's a friendly country, and identify them as they came, and either reject them or arrest them or whatever, because these are basically Antifa's fighting forces in the future in a coming civil war in America, which, according to him, that's what they want. Whether that's going to happen, I'm not so sure. I think maybe America might be a little more resilient than that, but
I agree with that.
But I mean, for example, he says these characters go and live in Portland, and they're not just living there because they like to be near the Pacific Ocean. They're living there because that's literally the United States training camp for these guys on how you attack police. I mean, there's like nightly combat going on, and they learn how to use their various tools, homemade shields, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's what's going on. I mean, this is literally like the Syria of the United States. And he also mentioned that there were, various different layers to this, and the real bad guys who actually spearheaded the attack on the Capitol were the fighting forces of these folks who many times are children of privilege. They don't need money, so they can just do whatever they want. And so they just move from city to city or wherever they decide there's going to be some action. And these guys go in and lead the charge. And they're very highly trained by the time they get to this point. And not only trained in fighting, but trained in the tools of deception to hide what's going on. For example, he mentioned clowning. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, Bill.
No,
I wasn't, but having been on the scene and seen these guys in action myself, and just kind of vaguely, put together, these guys have a plan. They're not just here like the rest of us were. They're here with a plan. And I speak specifically of the two big anti-war demonstrations, I think maybe in 69 and 71. We just showed up because we heard Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin were going to do a free concert on the Washington Monument grounds. That's all we cared about.
Yeah.
We were having a good time, and here these guys move through the crowd. There were about 200 of them, and they're really hardcore people. You could tell they were there for a reason, and they moved right to the front and started throwing rocks and bottles at the police, and then they'd withdraw back into the crowd. The police would charge the crowd, and the whole idea was to try to get the rest of the crowd into the battle. And I could see this, even though, I was only 25 or something, had no idea of what was going on, but I could see this action was somehow planned. And when you magnify this by many years of training for these hardcore guys, you can see how easily this determined spearhead led the charge into the Capitol building. And we had a reporter on the ground when I was doing a live stream. That was, I think, our first live stream, wasn't it, Beth?
Yeah.
January 6th.
Was.
And
Can I add something here, Bill? I think the video I saw showed the Capitol Police removing the barriers so people could go into the Capitol.
Yes.
It wasn't a charge.
Right.
They removed the barriers to let them in.
Right. They let them in.
And
absolutely.
There's also a video of the Capitol Police standing by the door. It looks like they're almost greeting people as they come through. They sure weren't trying to stop them. They were just
ushering them in.
Yeah. Ushering, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. But it's also my understanding both the FBI and the Capitol Police knew that this event was being infiltrated by others who were going to cause disruption.
Yes. Well, that's one of the points that I was making or trying to make yesterday, was that the police were basically given the order to stand down, just like they have been in all the riots that have been going on and everything else.
Yes. Certain people wanted this to happen so they could use use it as leverage to institute other things like martial law or something like that.
Right. Well, and you were talking
and
about
that's been documented now that they were told to stand down. I mean, it seemed obvious to a lot of us watching it, but now they actually have the order that they were told to stand down. So sorry.
It worked to perfection because they've got the media as well, and so the media can keep things confused and highlight the wrong things, not highlight the fact that, what was obvious from watching those videos was the Trump folks, when they were walking through Statuary Hall, they were staying between the rope and stanchion,
taking pictures,
going, wow,
taking pictures too.
And the bad guys were the ones with their homemade weapons going, let's tear it up.
Senator Cruz was talking to a group of people about when they were passing the stimulus package. And he said, let's see, can we not give stimulus money to illegal immigrants? And the Democrats, no, of course we're going to do that. Well, how about we not give it to prisoners? No, the prisoners should get. Well, how about we let's just say not the murderers. And, every single time that he tried to object to somebody who, I don't know, maybe that didn't deserve stimulus check, the Democrats just in mass, voted it down.
Well,
I have there's a question up here about who is in charge of the Capitol Police. In other words, who was it that gave that order to stand down?
Pelosi. Yeah.
One of the problems was that there are three people in charge. To do anything, the police officer who was in charge had to get permission from all three of them. It's someone that represents Pelosi, someone that represents Schumer now, and then a third person.
It was the sergeant at arms of the Senate and the sergeant at arms of the House,
and one other person. There were three of them.
I don't remember, but the point was Pelosi was the boss.
Yeah, but you think about in an emergency that he had to get all three of them on the phone or talk to them or something.
This is so sad. I don't know where this is going, but summer's coming, and I've got a bad feeling that we're going to see Portland starting to multiply.
The mayor of Portland has now decided that they've had enough riots there.
Oh, really?
That's right.
Yes. He recently said they were going to crack down. I don't know. I wouldn't think a year would be enough. Maybe 2 or 3 years. But.
Yeah.
But didn't he didn't he want to defund the police? So who is he going to crack down on these people with if he doesn't have any?
Social workers. They're going to send social workers out to counsel the people.
some city had hired a former pimp to be in charge of the community outreach.
Oh.
Where do you think this thing is going? I mean, are we going to see, like I say, Portland multiples starting to happen all over, led by some of
I think we, the people, are going to start standing up and fighting back, because people have begun going into their city councils in huge numbers and shouting down city council members and demanding certain changes. And I mean, I'm beginning to see little pockets of we the people popping up in different, county commissioners or whatever, different meetings, and saying, we've had enough. We're not going to put up with this anymore. So I don't know, to what extent.
Going, Bill?
Well, I just would hope that that continues what Beth was talking about, and also that they stand up and start running for offices locally and start at least at that level and throw these bums out. Get rid of them, and then do the same at the next level at the state, and then do it in Washington. Get them all out. Throw them out. They're worthless. Look at what they've gotten us to. I mean, we're in a mess now, and it's their responsibility. They messed it up.
That's right.
Most of them are Democrats, as I can tell.
Yeah, and watching local politics, the quality of the people that run for local office has really dropped. I mean, it used to be community leaders. They were already leaders, and then they'd run for office. And now it's these people that don't know anything. And for a while on our city council, there was only one person with a job.
Yeah.
Community organizers can become president.
Well, that's right.
Well, I mean, Biden has set the trend. Stay in your basement when you run for president.
That's right.
You don't have to campaign, low budget campaign, all that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Until William Jennings Bryan, I mean, that's what presidential candidates did, though. They campaigned from their home. So Biden's just trying to, his excuse is, I'm just, revisiting this grand old American tradition instead of going out amongst the people. I mean, Bryan got on a train and would speak from the back of the caboose, and sometimes speak for 4 hours at a crack and do it 3 or 4 times a day. I mean,
what was there anybody there at the end of his speech?
Yes, and that's where the term torchlight parades came from, because then the people would have their torches and go marching through the streets and stuff like that. It was so similar to Trump. It's just raw America fighting back. And
Mitt Romney was recently booed in Utah, just horribly booed. And I think people have had enough, and I do believe that they're rising up and they're finding their voice and they're speaking out. Recently, a little on a separate note, but Jim Jordan has now announced that they do have enough votes to oust Liz Cheney from her leadership positions. So I don't know if they do or not, and I don't know if he's saying that in order to push Kevin McCarthy to do something, but that is actually encouraging if they do have enough votes to push her out of her. She wants to run for president.
I think that's a great idea.
I do too. I think we all should donate to her campaign immediately if it yet exists.
But the question is, which party is she going to run in?
Well, of course, the Republican. She's demented enough to think that there's actually a silent majority that agrees with her.
But when you're a Republican and Nancy Pelosi is one of your biggest supporters, that just doesn't bode well.
Okay, well, what else is going on in the past week that we might want to talk about? Or Bill, you haven't been on in a while. What's on your mind? What's the premier concern you've got?
Well, aside from sustaining the Constitution here in this country and basically the rule of law, which we, of course, as you noted, are losing quite rapidly here. I mean, even the Rutherford Institute came out a couple of years back, saying we no longer have a Fourth Amendment, because they're just treating it as a non-existent piece of paper. Other than that, I'm having problems with we discussed offline, different kinds of directed energy at us. So, and we are picking it up with spectrum analyzers, and we filed police complaints and so on about this. So, and we are now going back at the DoD because we can show that some of these are military directed energy weapons. So, and we're doing this officially.
Our military?
Yep.
Our military is participating.
Yep.
On who?
They're radiating us on between 2.9 and 3.1 gigahertz on a line of sight transmission from something overhead, and it's not a satellite.
What is it? What does that mean?
A drone.
Oh, really?
And who are they targeting?
You're talking to John.
We lost the signal when we transferred. We were using spectrum analyzers, picking this up, and we moved from our house where we were picking it up, and we went about 200 yards away, and it went away.
Oh, so they're targeting you.
Yeah.
And so still,
a little note going into the DODIG saying, where are we supposed to file this complaint in the Department of Defense with this military signal hitting us at 2.9 to 3.1 gigahertz, which we've analyzed so far, and we got it down a little bit to a 200 channel stack carrier with sounders going through the different parts of this channels one at a time, going in sequence. So
you mean frequency hopping?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
What would that do?
It would mix the whatever in it was through the 200 channel system, the thing they are directing at us.
But I mean, what the thing they're directing at you? What effect does that have?
Until this year, Bill had a full head of hair.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's true.
Oh, Johnny.
Actually, I'm getting a little more hair on the top here. So, but no, I mean, it's going to have. There's any number of things. If you do the research, there's about 100 and some patents on these kinds of weapons. They can do all kinds of things, and it's if you do your research, do directed energy weapons, Google, and you'll get all kinds of information on it. I think they said worldwide in the United States, I think it is the budget for directed energy weapon research is like $23 billion next year.
Wow.
Huh.
So it's nothing that's this has been going on for a number of time. That's what's been happening in the embassy in Cuba, or even 50 years ago in the embassy in Moscow. They used that kind of weapons with our people in the embassy in Moscow.
So what do they do? Clear no-fly zones over this area?
Actually, I don't think they do anything. They just fire it. I mean, that's just what the Cubans did, what the Russians did. They didn't. I mean, our people in the embassy were the target. They just fired it out.
And they evacuated everybody from Cuba, didn't they?
Most of them, I think. Yeah.
And did they do the same in Moscow?
I don't believe so. I don't recall that. That was the 1970s.
Yeah. Is there a defense for it? Is there something you can put up that
we've tried to actually these we're using some form of pulsed energy, which we're still zeroing in on. So we're still working on this stuff. I don't want to tell you everything we're doing.
Oh, okay.
We don't want to give away all these things, all our techniques.
You brought it up.
We don't want the evil empire to know what we're doing, to actually document how to prove what they are about.
Oh, right. Yeah, you don't want to give them any hints. Well, I mean, just in general, does it?
You can report it to one authority that we know is going to take action. It's called the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Sure.
It's hard for me to keep a straight face.
We already did it. We went above them to the DOJ. They said that's not our responsibility.
Directed energy weapons used on American citizens. No, that's
not their responsibility. They don't cover that area.
It's not in the Constitution. There's nothing about directed energy. Yeah,
they're really the director. It's really it's not the DOJ. It's the DOI. They are injustice. Is what it is. Not the Department
I call it the Department of Just Us.
Of Injustice.
Just us.
Just us.
Just us.
And we're not included. It's just us, not us.
Yeah.
I have a computer question for Bill.
Sure.
The audit that's going on in Maricopa County now. two things that they've come out with, I guess, this week. One is that the flash drives were being taken off site at night during the election. And the other, which seems really strange to me, is that the Board of Elections there claims they don't have the passwords to get in the computer, that only
Right.
Dominion has that. What would that mean if Dominion has the passwords and these computers are hooked up to the internet, what could they do?
They could change anything they want in the voting process. But the point is, here's the other point. NSA has records of all the, fiber optic and otherwise cable satellite connections in the internet and around the world. And so they could see any attempt by Dominion or anybody else attempting to change anything through the network in those devices or in those records. I think taking the flash drives off the site was probably to ensure preservation of the data. That's probably the intent of it. Now, whether or not that meant they didn't hook it up somewhere else and change the data, who knows,
Yeah.
But
Well, and Dominion won't give up the passwords. They are
password,
refusing. Yeah, they're refusing to cooperate.
that just shows you how fraudulent this is. I mean, I'm
Well,
sorry, I used
exactly.
the wrong word there.
If you are innocent, you do not mind scrutiny. You have nothing to hide.
First of all, it has to do with the public interest and the public interest in a fair and equitable election and process. It has nothing to do with a commercial product or a commercial industry. They have no control of it. That belongs to the public.
I mean, once Dominion sells them the machines and fixes them, keeps them operating, I wouldn't think that they should have anything to do with the actual election process. That should be the election officials.
And actually, though, in the government contracts, and I ran a few of them, once the government pays for something from a company, they own that. And they have the right to universal use of that product that they have purchased, period.
But
I have some questions from a guy who asks a lot of questions. Good
Okay.
questions. Does the U.S. Postal Service open and scan all mail or only selected based on to and from addresses? What percentage of snail mail do you think ends up in the NSA database?
I believe all of it does, at least the addressing from the external visuals, when they do the scanning of the letters and sort them. I think that basically is the to from kind of thing. Issue is recorded and stored and shared.
That helps them construct their nets, right?
Yeah, it's a way of saying A sends a letter to B, B sends a letter to C, and that's how you build your network. But people that do the same with phone numbers or email or anything. It's the same. It's called chaining. You chain together the relationships,
which they have to some degree on everybody.
Yeah, well, yeah, virtually everybody. And I figure at least 4 to 5 billion people on the planet. Yeah.
I worked for a company called Name Analysis Systems at one point. At Dulles Airport, there's that big black tetragonal building right there as you come into the airport, the real modernistic looking one. Well, that's where they were located. And we had, at that time, I think 4 billion names in our database. And that's all they did all the time, was just to categorize names. And this was early 90s, maybe late 80s.
Yeah. Well, you see, I think that was a part of the flaw in their rendering program. They were relying more on name than anything else. And name is probably the least reliable attribute of any person. I mean, how many? I looked it up. I think it's 6 or 7 Bill Binnies, William Edward Binnies in the United States. That's the least reliable attribute of a person. How many Mohammeds are there in the Middle East?
It was very tedious because the people that occupied our floors were basically brilliant linguistic experts, spoke all the known languages. It was very tedious and time consuming.
Yeah, I think they're trying to use fingerprints and I don't know whether it's iris scans or something like that.
They could use voice recognition also.
Yeah, all those things have a reliability factor associated with them. It's like even the face matching. If you try to do face matching, you measure certain points or between characteristics of the face and try to match it up that way, but that ends up as a probable match. a level of probability. And the more people you have to try to match or find a match within, the more close probabilities matches you get. I mean, if you try to find a particular face among a city of, let's say, 1 million people, that's going to be tough because you'll get thousands of matches probably. So,
We
or
know that-
close matches.
Well, they set up that COVID thing with the contact tracing, where
Yeah.
you signed into it on it came on your phone, you signed into it, and they told you if you had been within, right?
Yes,
So that's
200.
that's because of a program that they already have in the federal government, and it's done at NSA. It's called the Treasure Map program.
Yeah.
That
So,
one
I mean,
maps the location of every device in the network every minute of every day.
So I know somebody who cooperated
Whether or
with
not you
that.
turn on your location services, they know.
Yep.
Yeah. Who cooperated with that and ended up having to be tested for COVID like 5 times because they kept getting this notice that they had been at a party or at church or at a store
Exactly
or
why I
someplace.
didn't
That's
report
exactly why I didn't do it too.
But the
Are
really
all
funny
are all U.S. phone calls automatically transcribed, or do they just save the digital recording? How large is the keyword database for flagging calls of interest? How often is the keywords databases updated? Well, they're updated constantly. I mean,
Yeah, it's an ongoing process, but it's a fallacious process too, because what it does is it selects everything for them. You know, they bury themselves by doing a dictionary selection process. Because let me give you an example here. I tried to implement some form of latent semantic indexing in my work in the past, and I spent a little bit of money in the government to try to figure out how to do that. And what it was in the end, I had this program set up to run and try to do the matching, and that is matching one article with another article, saying it's the same content or the same subject. That was the objective, okay? And so I gave it a small number. I had a few billion to pick from, so I picked just a small set of 10,000. I say, here, go look at this, see if you can group it, see if there's any clustering relationship. And it ended up being nothing. I got nothing, no distinction whatsoever. The whole screen was just covered and masked in one glob of everything. So, and the reason that is because of random probability of word selection. You know, if you get a word in one article or a couple of words, they'll match somewhere along the line some other article, and that one will match something else. And pretty soon it folds back on itself. And after a certain amount of so much data, it all folds on itself and you can't distinguish anything. And the same is true with facial recognition or any other kind of approximate type fuzzy logic approach. You always have some form of approximation or ability to cluster data is limited unless you can find some other factor that will reduce the numbers that you have to look at and improve your probability of match at that point. That's what I did that's why I put up the 2-degree search process on latent semantic indexing, was because it wouldn't be meaningful unless you stayed within that confined range of context. Now, in other words, that'd be a terrorist talking to somebody and somebody talking to somebody else. That's your range. And in there, if you have that context of words being used, then you have a very high rate, a probability of being matching a common set of understanding and discussion about a subject. Otherwise, you wouldn't.
And latent semantic indexing is what?
It's categorizing text, common text. It's like saying this text is in common with that one. And you do it by building a matrix kind of relationship of keywords and try to match up keyword combinations.
is that how you discovered that Biden was plagiarizing?
No, but they do have those bureaucratic matrices of words that you can make combinations left to right, top to bottom, bottom to top, right to left. Either way, diagonally, you can really sound smart, throwing all these words one after the other out there.
And not say a word and not say
exactly.
a thing.
Not really. No one could ever understand what you're saying.
Let me get through another one of these questions. Are
Yeah.
are telecommunication companies still mandated to turn over their call records to NSA? Wasn't that redundant as the NSA intercepts all calls anyway?
Yes, except in some cases, some of the companies get records from other companies, or that they don't necessarily cover. In other words, the coverage is pretty complete, but it's not absolute. That's one of the reasons they wanted. See, muscular program, if you recall, was a tap on the fiber optic lines between the backup centers or the data centers for the different companies, Google and some others, I think. And what they did at the end of the day, those companies were participating in the 702 program, which is where they try to look like they are obeying the law, when in fact, so they would go to them in the using the 702 program PRISM and ask for certain data based on a warrant or some justification they had for individual specifics. But in the background, they had unilaterally tapped the fiber optic lines between the data centers of these companies so that at the end of the day, when they backed up all their data, NSA would get it all. And the reason they would do that is because their coverage wasn't absolute, it was 80 to 90%, something like that, I would think.
Can't have that.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have to have everything. So when you go get that kind of data from them, you get you fill in the gaps you're missing. That's all that was. So I didn't answer the question on the coverage of the phone calls and everything. Yeah, I would say all the phone calls are recorded in one form or another, and they get the metadata about it. But they also, the evidence I was accumulating was showing or indicating that they were using translation scanning device against the video to turn video or audio into text, because text is easier than storing all the audio. You could store it. Eventually, I think they have to age it off. Maybe not. I'm not sure of the storage capabilities now. I estimated the storage at the Utah facility. They're at 5 zettabytes, which is a considerable amount. I think we
he's
discussed that
saying
before.
a zettabyte, which is many zeros beyond a megabyte.
Yes, it is 24 zeros. I mean, no, it's 18 zeros beyond a megabyte. Yeah. And the largest number defined for it is yottabyte, and that's the next one up. And beyond that, we don't have a name for it. But I was suggesting, as I said the other time we were on, I thought we ought to call it a lot of bytes or a bunch of bytes, something like that,
I think in your honor, we should call that a Benny byte.
Oh, Benny byte. It's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Beth. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just one of the theories that have been supposed by people during all of this COVID stuff is that they were really testing facial recognition technology, but with people having masks on, which I could have told them didn't work because I couldn't open my phone up with the mask on. But the other thing that some people were saying is that, there are video cameras everywhere. You go into the grocery store, you're being videotaped everywhere. There's security cameras. That what they're really trying to do is identify those people who did not wear masks, because now they can target them as possible rebels.
As defined by the Democrats in Congress.
As defined, say that.
As is defined by the Democrats in Congress, right?
Yeah.
In other words, they're political opponents. Yeah.
Right. So then they can target people who don't wear masks, because that would identify them as being rebellious.
Yep.
Difficult.
They're terrorists, obviously.
Yes. That's exactly right.
I assume the Russians put them up to that.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of more questions. Are U.S. fusion centers problematic? Are most of the fusion center staff contractors and thus not protected by whistleblower laws?
I think contractors are protected by whistleblower laws, but not in. I think there's an exception, and then it may be within the classified area. National security area. They may have a problem there. I'm not sure what I didn't follow the laws being passed under Obama or any of the others about whistleblower protections, because as a whistleblower in the national security area, I never had any protections whatsoever. The only protection I had was the FBI when they came to raid me, at the gunpoint. So,
oh, geez.
What's a fusion center?
Well, that's a bunch of agencies that Department of Homeland Security, FBI, NSA, CIA, IRS too, by the way,
Oh,
who are infusion centers looking at all the data, Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA.
and
They also are a part of that, and they're all looking each for their own kinds of things and trying to actually. That's one of the ways I think we discussed before. The IRS got the relationships of people who were trying in the Tea Party and who were trying to get 501c3 access, and through the IRS, that's how they slow rolled them for elections because they knew we were going to politically react active to a certain degree. They also did that with the religious groups and anybody they didn't want to have 501c3. So, and yeah, I say they are problematic because these people are looking internal in the US and using it against the people of the United States.
Well, now
Yeah,
these came about as a result of 9/11 and how people in what do they call silos were not communicating, and so it's an attempt to do that.
I have a
fix that.
I have a question. I have a question from our good friend Samuel Anderson for Bill Benny. He wants to know what app you would recommend for mobile calls: Telegraph, WhatsApp, Signal, or something else.
I don't think it matters. I
So
don't try to hide
there's-
anything because those companies are in bed with them all anyway. If they're not in bed with the intelligence agency here in the United States, they're in bed with them overseas with the Germans, the British, any of the other Five Eyes, and any number of other countries around the world.
So none of them are really safe.
I
None of
don't
signals.
believe any of them are. No.
Okay. Well, there you go, Sam.
Sorry.
That's my positive outlook.
Okay, how about Edward Snowden exposed contractors and U.S. intelligence people could access the NSA database for any purpose without any second person for access confirmation. Has that security problem been fixed? What a joke.
No. No, it isn't fixed. I mean, they're more dependent on them now than they ever have been. I mean, they've outsourced a lot. I mean, when I was there, I objected to the outsourcing of the fundamentals of the NSA, which was the computer network and communications network, outside to corporations to manage for us. That's crazy. I mean, that meant that's how Snowden got in the position he was in. He was able to look at managing all of the databases for NSA, all of the domestic whatever, querying the databases, all of that. I mean, that's just crazy.
Isn't that the reason that the NSA is the one agency that's supposedly required to be headed by a military officer?
Yeah, that's because it's the NSA CSS. That's the Combined Security Services. That's the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine components of SIGINT for the military. So that all falls under NSA too. That's why he's a military guy.
All right.
Well, I just wanted to clarify because this came up the first time you were on, and I believe that I know the answer, but I wanted to make sure. You said, I believe, that CB radios were safe, or
they're much safer. Yeah,
much safer.
Yeah.
But that having a VPN doesn't necessarily do any good either.
No, I mean, there are all kinds of things to penetrate any kind of network anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on how bad they want it.
Yeah, exactly.
So some of these things that you're safe from anyone but the NSA. So if you're worried about, if you're really doing a top job of supporting President Trump, for example, then you have something to worry about.
Yep. Not just from NSA, but CIA and FBI and DOJ and yeah.
How do we fix this?
You have to fire them all. I mean, we can't look at now. After that trumped up riot down in 6th of January down in D.C., they've surrounded themselves now with barbed wire and fences. Now it's they've and you take a ride around D.C. and there's nobody there riding, nobody at all, and yet they have all these people around them sitting there around this fencing and everything.
Right.
It's a total pretext.
It's like the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Baghdad. Now
call it the purple zone.
Right.
Well, here's an interesting question. Does the NSA make the CIA redundant?
No, because CIA does more human than their responsibility is human. NSA is SIGINT. Signals intelligence.
intelligence.
Yeah.
Can I go back to an earlier question? I'm still in Maricopa. And you said that all of the internet traffic, if there was any, from these voting machines would be tracked by the NSA and I guess other people. I mean, Mike Lindell has this long list of all this, I guess it's internet traffic showing when different votes came in and stuff. Is that what he's showing? I watched his thing, but I didn't think he explained it very well.
No, I think he was probably just showing the voting records as they came in, right, from them as they were being reported, not what was being sent to the. See, each of these devices has an IP address, so you can address that particular device on the network, or a machine access code, a MAC number. So you could specifically address that device anywhere in the world. And it's unique. So what that means is NSA, all they'd have to do is do a IC reach or a X key score query for that IP address or that MAC number. And it would pull out any transactions going between that device and anybody else anywhere.
But a machine that is supposed to be counting votes, just counting ballots, is there any reason to have that hooked up to the internet?
Absolutely not. That's where it should not be.
Hey.
I know the ones where I live are not hooked up to the internet. They're not capable of being hooked up to the internet. And I was surprised that anybody would have voting machines that could be hooked up, because if it could be hooked up to the internet, it can be hacked.
Early on, shortly after, when all this brouhaha started to surface, I forget what senator, but some senator went, and I believe it was to Detroit, and there was a video done on this, and they were saying, now these voting machines are not hooked to the internet. And then the senator points up at a Wi-Fi directly above the voting machine and says, what about that? And so then the IT expert goes around and goes, what do you know? This one is connected to the internet.
Yeah, that's right.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
That's right. Well, they've shown videos of the Dominion employees or whatever training people on how to hook them up to the internet. And then, of course, they try to claim that it wasn't possible to hook them up. It was just ridiculous. But they have it in their manual. This is how you hook it up to the internet.
Bill, what percentage of the voting machines do you suspect are internet connected right now? Just rough.
All the ones
I would think
Arizona,
at least half of them.
Michigan.
At least half of them.
And so then the older ones would likely, or would be the ones not connected.
That would be my idea, my sense of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't even matter if they are connected to the internet. I've seen illustrations of people showing just with putting the votes in and having the algorithm telling it to change the votes. You know, that what it doesn't have to be connected to the internet for the software.
That's why they went around the night before and stuck what do you call
flash drives?
Yeah, flash drives
and you know, put in new code. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do Biden gets plus 15% and Trump gets minus 15% of all votes.
If a machine is supposed to count votes, why would that even be possible? I mean, it seems like a really simple thing to count votes. You don't need to count fractional votes because we don't have elections where you count fractional votes.
You can't cheat that way.
Well, I think
you have to be able to cheat.
Yeah. I think I was watching a program on through the internet here on what they were showing a clip from CNN where the guy was reporting the votes as they were being compiled by CNN, and at one point they subtracted votes from Trump and added votes to Biden.
Yeah.
And I never understood how you got negative votes. You know, how do you get negative votes?
Yeah. And on live TV.
But we have to point out for our security on YouTube that these election problems would not have changed the outcome of the election.
Not individually, no. Aggregate, I don't know. My sense of it is from the overall things that I've witnessed in the, it quite clearly appeared, at least from a mathematical point of view, that there was some kind of program running through the voting of multiple states. And of course, the big, as President Trump at the time showed it, the big surge after hours certainly threw Biden over the top.
Yeah, at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Behind without no witnesses and what have you, coming out
But
from
that,
under.
that didn't necessarily change the outcome of the election. That's
Well, who votes
well-
at 3 o'clock in the morning? That's what I want to know. Who is going to the polls to vote at 3 or 4 in the morning? Nobody I know.
Who is delivering blank ballots at 3 o'clock in the morning?
200,000 of them from New York to Pennsylvania. I don't know, but it didn't change the outcome.
How often is it that the votes arrive at the counting station from a suitcase underneath the table?
Yeah, I know.
Hidden by a cover.
Well, that may have been
run
going
through the
on.
machine.
That may have been going on for several decades. We don't know.
Yeah,
That's right.
it has.
I mean, this is the political machine in operation, isn't it?
Oh, well, at one point in time, maybe when we're in heaven, we will know how many people were actually legitimately elected, and I think it's going to be shocking to find out.
People have been cheating in elections ever since there have been elections.
Yes, right. That's right. Messing with their straw.
And of course, we did send a letter out to my wife and Kirk Wiebe and I sent a letter out to all the states and all the secretaries of states of the United States, all 50 of them, plus Puerto Rico and Guam and 2 other places I can't remember. But and we told them we had a way of validating and verifying and all the voting in the country, and we would be glad to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
And we heard back from none of them.
None of them.
That just made it clear.
We know the results of the election because Biden and Kamala have gone to numerous locations and have shown up to huge audiences. They had at least 4 people at one place, but they were protesters.
Yeah.
Well, I call the last goings on as a selection, not an election.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's what it is.
It
well,
did
it's
not
kind of like
change the outcome of the election. We want to be perfectly clear about that.